Every day the little girl wraps a thick bandage around her chest to avoid the risk of being seen. First thing she does when she wakes up, the first thing she does is put her white dentures in her mouth to cover up the cigarette stains. Whenever you go out, with a hairband to cover up the scars on my neck, for fear of exposing her past. She didn't want to get caught for it, or have her true identity revealed, because underneath her 10-year-old girl's youthful appearance, behind her teenage 10-year-old exterior was a 30-something crazed murderer inside. Before coming into foster care, before coming to her foster home, the girl was kept in a remote mental institution in Estonia. Despite her many illnesses, she, both in height and appearance, she looked only 10 years old, but the director, who knows how dangerous the girl is, knew how dangerous the girl was. He did not hesitate. She was placed in a special ward with the highest security. But despite all these precautions, the girl could not be stopped from escaping. First she lured the guards into the ward under the pretext of playing a game. She tricked the guards into entering the ward. Then she stood on a bench and confused him. But just as the guard became complacent, and gradually let his guard down, after easily obtaining the access card, what followed was a series of agile maneuvers. After passing through several tight steel doors, the girl also made it to the only remaining barrier downstairs. The girl opened the door with ease, and out she strutted. By now it was snowing heavily outside, and the doctor, who was just off duty, and immediately drove away from the asylum. But when she returned to the city, when she locked the car and opened the door, the trunk suddenly and strangely opened. He inspected the trunk. He found that it was a false alarm and prepared to enter the house, but it was too late. The girl arrives at the doctor's house. The girl relaxed and drank wine. While enjoying herself, she uses her computer to browse the missing children's website. She looked at a picture of Xiaoyi, a girl who had been lost a few years before. And then she looked at the slight resemblance of herself in the mirror. The girl suddenly smiled a strange smile. And a sinister plan was born. In a park late at night, the girl was alone, swinging uncontrollably. But when a policeman on patrol comes to her and asks her about it, she instantly turned into a pitiable figure. When she received the news of her missing daughter, Jing, she rushed over in a hurry. They were arranged to meet in a hall. When they first met Sister Jing, Xiaoyi quietly hid behind the piano. She wanted to test her reaction, but to my surprise, Jing was so sure that she recognized her daughter. "It's Mommy," seeing how well the identification went to the country with Xiaoyi. However, she was surprised to find she didn't know what her daughter had been through in the past few years. Naturally, Jean didn't care about these things. Just after she got off the lift, her husband Dason and her eldest son were waiting there. Her father hugged his daughter with excitement. The whole family was overwhelmed with the joy of having. They were overwhelmed by the joy of having lost and found their daughter. They soon brought Xiaoyi back home, and looking at the rich furnishings of the house, a smile of satisfaction appeared on her face. To hide her identity, Xiaoyi disguised herself every day, and tried to imitate the accent of the missing girl. However, during a dinner party, she almost revealed her identity, because just as the family was still reveling in the joy of finding their daughter. A detective who was in charge of their daughter's disappearance came to the door. For years, he hadn't given up looking for the girl, but when he was confronted by Xiaoyi, who had refused to describe her story, suddenly he became a little suspicious. So he suggested to the Dason couple to take their daughter for a paternity test, but to their dismay, the family objected unanimously, because they insisted that this beautiful, kind-hearted little girl in front of them was undoubtedly their daughter. The detective had no choice but to give up. So a few days later, while the couple were out, the detective came to their home again, under the pretext of going to the bathroom. He stole Xiaoyi's fingerprints. He was going to take them back and compare them carefully. But to his surprise, the girl saw everything. Seeing that her cover was about to be blown, I disguised myself as if I was taking a shower. Then she put on her clothes and followed her out quietly. By now, Jean had finished her work and returned home. She heard the sound of water running in the bathroom. She picked up her daughter's diary which she had left on her toy. But just as she was about to turn the page, she was shocked by the picture in front of her. It was a picture of a cursed police detective. Kim was horrified when she saw it. She rushed into the bathroom but found her daughter was not there. She then realized that something was wrong. On the other hand, back at home, the detective, carefully took Xiao Yi's fingerprints, and then compared them carefully with the missing girl's. As expected, the results showed a complete mismatch. The detective instantly knew that the girl must be an imposter. Without even noticing, the dagger on the counter had disappeared without a trace. The detective instantly collapsed to the ground and was dying. But while I was still wondering what had gone wrong, Jean had 4 years ago, the eldest son pushed his sister down the stairs by mistake. He caused the accidental death of his daughter, but in order to protect their family from being torn apart, the mother and son hid the truth from their husbands and faked their daughter's disappearance. But since then, they missed their daughter so much, the husband was devastated from then on, until Xiaoyi, posing as her daughter, appeared. The husband was convinced. It's only then that the family's deathly doldrums are revived, since both parties were hiding secrets. So they quickly came to an agreement. They decided to live on with their secret, so that the psychiatrist wouldn't find out. They had agreed on their lines in advance. Everything was played out seamlessly. And to make it even more realistic, Kim dresses Xiaoyi, dressed up in her daughter's favorite clothes, in front of her friends and relatives, showing off their happiness. Her husband, who had no idea, believed her. He was so happy to have his daughter back, so he began to take care of Xiaoyi in every way possible. And all this gradually aroused Kim's alarm, seeing that the girl was getting out of control. So the eldest son threatened. He threatened to expose her if she didn't behave. No one would believe a psychopath's words anyway. But to her surprise, Xiaoyi didn't take it lying down. So in order to control the girl better, Kim began to sneakily adding sedative drugs to her dinner. But to her surprise, she was soon discovered by Xiaoyi. But it's not in her nature not to take revenge. So the next day, she made breakfast for the whole family early, and prepared a daily vegetable juice for Kim. Vegetable juice. Knowing there was something wrong, however, she was met by her husband and daughter. I knew that mother and son would not make it easy for themselves, so she saw a chance of a lifetime. She was going to get rid of them to save her life, but she was stopped by a passerby. Like planting a time bomb for herself? There was always the possibility of danger. So she had no choice but to do what she had to do. So the mother and son teamed up and took control of Xiaoyi. They tried to fake their daughter's suicide. But to their surprise, she resisted to her death. After a violent pushing and shoving session, she was pushed down the stairs by her brother. She fainted instantly. Her husband, after hearing her husband's story, time was running out. They had to do it before her husband returned. But the girl who had pretended to faint was nowhere to be seen. The mother and son had no choice but to split up and search a carpet. She went into a frenzy. She immediately jumped on him and fought with him. As she watched Xiaoyi flee upstairs, Jean immediately chased after her, but she didn't notice that they had inadvertently started a fire. Sister Kim pushed the door open with great joy. On a whim, Xiaoyi opened the window and jumped onto the roof. They chased each other up the steep eaves of the house in a desperate attempt. By now the fire was burning fiercely beneath their feet. Xiaoyi staggered up to the highest point of the roof, and Dason, who had just arrived home, was dumbfounded by the scene before him. The two men were soon wrestling on the roof. They both slipped off the roof. Their lives were hanging by a thread. Seeing his wife and daughter in danger, Dason was so excited that he pulled open the window. He went towards them in the middle of the fire, because she knew very well at that moment, after this fire, no one would ever know what had happened here. And no one would suspect a 10-year-old child. And that's how Xiaoyi was once again taken to a home for street children. She played innocent and pitiful to her heart's content, waiting to be adopted again by a kind family, without realizing it. Before she died, the detective had quietly sent the police the results of the fingerprint match. So unlike before, this time, the most severe punishment. This time, she'll be facing the most severe punishment from the law. This is the end of the film. Like and follow for more great new episodes. See you next time.